This is Ground Affected.
My name is Brent,
And welcome to shrinking your models to smaller than your thumb. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I painted this Mysterio sculpted by C27 Miniatures and Terrains. You will find a link in the description below, as well as, before I go any further, you can buy unpainted 3D printed versions of these models directly from me. The best place to contact me is probably on Instagram, or if you're feeling a little bit extra spendy, you can get me to paint one too. Now, before we get into the rest of the video, I need to tell you to like and subscribe. If you felt like I have not earned that subscription from you by the end of the video, it's easy enough to just remove it and follow the instructions I'll give in the last few seconds. Also, don't forget I have a Patreon where we speak daily about printing, painting, model making, and sometimes other things, since that's a new thing nowadays. But more importantly, we have a community going where there is a wealth of knowledge, and any and all questions are usually answered within a couple of minutes, if not researched and the answer found for you. And now, without any further ado, let's get straight into the video of how to paint a Mysterio. I'm going to start this model with a zenithal highlight. This is going to help me get volumes. Because I'm using an ink, I'm going to have to layer multiple layers, and in order to dry this, I'm going to use my airbrush to help. Pressing down without pulling back is going to blow air, and this will help dry the paint that you've placed down. I'm going to zenithal highlight both the base and Mysterio. Then using Tesseract Glow, which is a technical paint from Citadel Paints, I'm going to spray a base tone over the top of the zenithal of this smoky, magical smoky bottom base thing. Now using Ghost Green, which is a fluo air paint from Army Painter, I'm going to use that to darken up some of the recesses and some of the shadows at the bottom. I'm going to try to keep some of the brighter yellow on the top part of this model. This is going to indicate the lights. Using Imp Yellow and a little bit of Liquitex White, I'm going to mix the two to create an even lighter highlight on the top part of the smoky base. In order to bring some saturated color into this, I'm going to spray Drakenhof Nightshade, which is a blue, into the shadows of this. Then using purple from Model Color Vallejo, I'm going to spray a base coat over his entire cloak. Because there is a zenithal underneath, this is already going to give some element of highlighting and shadowing already. Using Pixie Pink, I'm going to then highlight a couple of edges just to create a bit more depth in it, and then I'm going to spray that through the airbrush onto the highest points and the highlights of the cape all around. I'm going to use the brush because this will give a more saturated color, and I'm going to use that to catch a couple more edges that I'd like to be brighter. Then using Contrast Orc Flesh, I'm going to base coat the entire suit of Mysterio. If you notice, when I sprayed his cloak, on his bulb, I left a little bit of overspray on there. This is going to help create a bit of an illusion later on. Using a Goblin Green from Army Painter, I'm going to start to mix this color brighter and brighter, and I'm going to start catching all the highlights on the model that I want to bring out. Taking my time to pay attention to where the light would hit the model. This is something that will take time to learn, but it isn't too difficult to pick this up, especially once you've put on a zenithal. You can have a look at the model and see where those highlights are going to be. I'm consistently going to build this brighter and brighter. I'm mixing Demonic Yellow into Goblin Green to get a brighter color that doesn't lose saturation. Using white will lose the saturation. Using a brighter color will help keep the saturation. I'm going to progressively work smaller and smaller and getting brighter and brighter as I work on these highlights on his suit. In order to do the yellow of his gloves and his boots, I'm going to first put down a grey. In this case, I'm starting off with ash grey, and I'm going to place that all over the hands and the boots. Then using contrast paint Yandan Yellow, I'm going to use that as a base coat. By doing this, I'm creating a little bit more of a darker yellow in order for me to build up to a bright, super saturated bright yellow at the end, which will be the highest highlight on that yellow color. Super carefully working my way through shades of this gray, I can use thin and thick portions of this paint in order to create darker and lighter areas. This will help when you put the contrast paint over the top, because this will help create a little bit more depth and won't make it as flat when you paint that base coat down. Now using black, I'm going to thin this down a lot because I'm going to just try to map out the reflections on the top of his bulb. So slowly but surely I'll map them out with a very thin paint, and then I'll go back in with the fully saturated version of that paint and paint in the reflections and highlights and everything that I need on this bulb. This is something that I have no idea really how to explain this, but I do hope to go into this more in the future. test fitting him before I'm about to glue him, and I'm definitely going to use super glue to stick this guy in. It doesn't need anything too fancy. I'm not going to play games with him, so I'll just stick him in with super glue, a little bit on his cape and a little bit on his foot. This is going to help me hold it so that I can actually start painting the highlights and see the entire picture as an overall composition. Using a little bit of blue to reflect a bit of light and also to bring some more saturation into the piece, I'm going to put that as a nice glaze into the dome of his bulbous head. Now using a gloss clear coat from Army Painter, I'm going to paint the entire bulb of his dome nice and shiny, just like the fishbowl it actually is. I added a tiny bit of white into the pixie pink because pink is one of those colors that is made up by adding white to another color. So this doesn't desaturate it too much, but I can use that as a highlight on the cape. Using a blue violet from Model Color, I'm going to paint those little symbols on his shoulders that hold his cape onto his body. I'm also going to highlight those with a little bit of white just to get a bit more highlights. Going back into the suit again with a little bit more yellow this time. This is going to be Imp Yellow from Army Painter, and this is just going to help bring out a little bit more contrast in the suit and make sure that the highlights look nice and bright and the light is bouncing off really well. Putting some highlights into the little orb on the end of his smoky thing, and also making sure to do edge highlights on certain areas. This is something that's not a realistic look, but it does help separate foreground and background. I decided that I needed to smoothen out the suit paint just a little bit, so in order to do that I used Bell Tan Green, which is a shade from Citadel Color. You could use any green shade or green tone from Army Painter for the same effect. And towards the end of a model like this, I will be going through and just highlighting areas in order to bring a little bit more contrast between the highest points of brightness and the darkest, deepest parts of the shadows. This just helps create illusion that the model has depth and you have some sort of composition going on in your piece. And this is the entire paint set that I used for this model. This is the whole palette as I used it. Of course, I know you enjoyed that video, and if you didn't, there's only one thing that you can do, really. But I'll tell you about that in about a couple of seconds. First, I need to thank the new Patreon that we got this week, which is Russell Bonnet. Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who's joined the Patreon and got nothing. However, you did get access to the exclusive Discord where we speak daily. We've spoken about this already. Also, I need to announce that there is going to be a painting competition coming extremely soon. I'm working on the logistics of this and trying to make sure that everything is perfect before I launch it, but there will be a painting competition, and I hope that I can see as many people entering and sharing and tagging as much as possible. And if you felt like this video helped you or showed you anything and you feel like this channel deserves to have more views, then the best thing you can do is click on another ground affected video and also watch that one through to the end too. More importantly, make sure you click the like, make sure you're subscribed, and if you want to see more content like this, click the notification bell. But if none of that was up to scratch and you absolutely hated it all, it's pretty simple really. All you have to do is click the dislike button. It looks like this, and when you're done clicking that, just cool. I think I'm gonna have to make a t-shirt with that.